farm that we're on. And that happened like in 1986. So we've been up here for almost 40 years. And we didn't move to this farm to necessarily be farmers. We moved to this farm to do activism. And we kind of got started in activism at Jonah House in Baltimore in 1980. We moved into Jonah House, which was where Phil Berrigan and Liz McAllister were doing nonviolent direct action around nuclear weapons for years and years. And a month before we moved in, this is the Plowshares 8, and they went into a missile factory and hammered on warheads, and we're looking at 64 years in prison. So that's kind of the milieu that we moved into that made us start paying attention. And most of what we did was involved in nuclear war and nonviolent direct action. So when we formed the community here in 1986, it was the first analog GoFundMe that we ever got involved in, and it was basically we sent out a letter to a couple hundred people saying, "Hey, we want to do this Catholic worker farm. We want you to consider sending us $100, and if we get $20,000." We'll be able to pull it off, because we found 57 acres of land for $12,000. And we figured that we could get, with $8,000, we could start building and developing and whatever. So that's what we did. And the first house that we built that we're still in is this one here, which was a donation. It is a log house that was built in 1892. And as you can see, it's got a lot of passive solar components to it. And so even though we moved to this land not to farm, we've always been environmentalists. And Barb's going to jump in and tell you a little bit about what that was about.
Well, I know for myself, I've been concerned about the environment since high school. My high school in Bloomington, Minnesota, we ran a recycling program on weekends, and we had Earth Day, and I think I don't know. I ran on a non-styrofoam cup platform when I was in seminary, going for the vice presidency of the seminary, and got a lot of hate mail over that one. But it's always been part of my values. We lived in Eastern Kentucky for a while, and I think 2/3 of the county didn't have running water. So there were several families living on our well that summer. That was a drought summer. So just water usage became part of our concerns. When we lived in Baltimore, we did a lot of salvaging of food, and went to the food depot, and I think 150 families came and got food from the food truck we'd bring back, of just discarded food from where all the grocers went. It was a produce terminal for Maryland. Also, time in Kentucky was the houses were shacks. They were very small. And we remember having work camps come down saying, how can people live in spaces so small? And we'd turn it around and say, maybe the question is, how can you live in houses so big? So when we started building the farm, that building looks a little bigger than it is. The original house was 17 by 27. You can see, can you go back to the other?
Yep, just keep talking.
So the original house, actually the barn, the outhouse, and the granary is down in your area. They're all in Old World, Wisconsin, as a premier example of finished log houses. And the house was built originally in Ulu, Wisconsin, in Bayfield County by a Finnish farmer, taken apart, sold, and activist friend of ours had bought it and decided not to use it, and donated the logs to our house. So it essentially came on a flatbed truck and looked like firewood. But the old timbers are still hanging in there. And so you can see that we've added a greenhouse on the front and all the south-facing windows. We were always interested in as much passive solar as we could have. We've never had hot water on demand in our house. We have a composting toilet. We use window quilts to, in the winter, keep heat in the summer, keep heat out. We use a couple cords of wood a year to heat the whole works. We don't have backup heating. And we've been accused of being the Spartans, but we think we live on the top of the planet as far as a beautiful home to live in with maybe a smaller footprint, although we just, as Americans, have big feet. So, so we really wanted our home to reflect our values and what we were trying to do with opposing nuclear weapons, because nuclear weapons uphold our standard of living. And they protect everything we have. And we wanted to provide a different message of saying we are, as war tax resistors and living more simply on the planet, we are trying to send a message that we don't need weapons to protect us. So we already had that all going on before climate change became the forefront in our mind. So it wasn't such a big leap as far as us changing our practices and the way our day-to-day life. But I think our focus and our activism has changed dramatically. And I live with Mike Miles here, and whatever Mike is really hot topicked on, he's really hot topicked on. So, you know, it was peak oil for a while, and our kids would go when we'd have college students come and say, oh, we've never heard of peak oil. Our kids would go, what have you said? We're going to go upstairs because Dad's going to talk for 2 hours on that. But this kind of changed Mike's life, this book, and so I'm going to turn it back to him.
So for basically the first 20 years of being on the farm, like Barb just said, we were environmentalists who were doing nonviolent direct action against war and empire. And then I read Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma. Anybody here read that? So that's where I found my introduction to some of the people who were doing regenerative agriculture, like Joel Salatin. And that led me to Alan Savory, who's a pretty famous ecologist who started in Africa, trying to restore desert soils into healthy soils. And I really didn't become aware of climate change until 2006, when I saw Inconvenient Truth. So even though we were doing all these environmental things, I really hadn't made the crossover. And it was about that time where I decided that at least where I put my personal energy was going to climate, because the whole climate thing is like slow motion nuclear warfare. And as I mentioned to a couple people before everybody was on, we had a significant climate event here in 2019 when derecho came through our farm with 104-mile-an-hour winds and tornadoes dipping out of basically what's an inland hurricane. And it blew our woods apart. Our buildings survived pretty much, few repairs we had to do, but all of our forests went down.
All of our animal pens went down. Our greenhouse and 2 greenhouses in our garden went down, were flattened. So it we felt very lucky, and everything that we build here is pretty much on the cheap. So everybody said, well, your homeowner's insurance probably paid for all that. And we went, oh, we don't really have that, because our house was like $6,000 to build, and everything is not very expensive. But our animals survived, and we rebuilt with help of friends.
So when I started realizing how significant this change should be, I started looking more and more at biology, because I have a background in well, I have a background in biology. I have a degree from Iowa State in zoology, and was going to be a veterinarian. And I started seeing that all of that stuff that I had learned a long time ago was pretty critical things. The slide that you're looking at here, when I was in college, basically we operated with 2 different kingdoms, the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, and everything else kind of got thrown in with an asterisk into one or the other. It was kind of like that. Now what you're seeing here is that we know there's at least is this 6 or 7 kingdoms, with plants being, this is according to gigatons of carbon present. So the biggest one is clearly plants, but in terms of other living organisms, the second biggest kingdom is bacteria. And then after that is these other smaller ones, archaea, protists, fungi, viruses, all of the invisible things. There's more of them than there are animals and humans. And when you look at the presence of humans on the planet in terms of gigatons of carbon, we're pretty insignificant. But we do a lot of damage because we don't understand how the systems work. We don't understand how, how all of these things interrelate. One of my favorite fun things to know and tell is about humans ourselves. We are every single human on this Zoom here tonight is an individual ecosystem that has 38 trillion microorganisms living in you and on you. In addition to that, you've got over 300 trillion viruses living in you and on you. When you add all of that up in terms of weight, it's a weight of roughly 2 to 6 pounds, which is about the size of your brain. So that's how many microscopic hitchhikers a healthy person has in them and on them at all times. And when they're in balance, most of what it does is it works. You have more genetic material on you and in you than the cells that make up your bodies. I don't know if I'm telling you something you already know, but we learned a little bit about how important the invisible things are during the pandemic. And if we don't pay attention to the invisible things, we're going to be in trouble. In terms of farming, the most important animals on every farm are the animals that are 3 feet under our feet. Doesn't matter what's on top of the soil. What matters is what you're doing to the soil. Carbon is not our enemy. Carbon is what the life forms on this planet are composed of. Carbon, when it's in the right place, keeps everything alive. there is no additional carbon coming into our planet. All the carbon that is here going through life forms is all the carbon we have. And as long as it's in the right place, going through life forms, everything functions. The problem is when carbon is in the wrong place. And fossil fuels, the Industrial Revolution, and the way that we farm has put carbon in the wrong places. And as with you all having, being 350.org, you know that the big place where carbon is that it shouldn't be is in the atmosphere, right? And so one of the things about carbon in the atmosphere is that the atmosphere is constantly touching the ocean, and people get very alarmed about rainforests and about destruction of rainforests and why they destroy rainforests. And yeah, animal food production is a part of that, but it's only a part of it. But most of the oxygen that we breathe, anywhere from 50 to 70% of the oxygen that we breathe, comes from phytoplankton in the ocean. That's the biggest source of oxygen on the planet. And what happens when carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere, interfacing with the ocean, it goes into the ocean, makes carbonic acid, and changes the pH of the ocean. And when that happens, you have all kinds of possibilities of destruction arising. Since the Industrial Revolution, the amount of carbonic acid in the ocean has gone up to the point where it's 30% higher than it was before the Industrial Revolution. So we're even changing the pH of the ocean because we don't know how to keep carbon in the right place, and we don't know how to put carbon in the right place. So let me maybe take a break there, because I as Barb said, I can get going. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to flip around a couple of these things that I still want to show you here. So what we do here, what I have up here is that this is in my mind, the two most important ecological principles that we have to deal with from here on out is primary productivity and embedded energy. Primary productivity is a pretty simple concept. It's what happens annually when photosynthesis takes place, and it's when photosynthesis is going on. It's chlorophyll capturing sunshine and turning it into plants. Here we go. Primary productivity. So you have annual primary productivity that can be measured every year, which is basically plants growing. And then there's all the things that eat plants and use plants. And one of the reasons that we have so much extinction going on of different creatures on the planet is that humans use an inordinate amount of primary productivity for themselves, about 40%, that we use in our own food production for humans, that we use in creating ethanol for our cars. All the things that we use for ourselves in terms of annual primary productivity is about 40%. And then as humans, we don't give back into the carbon cycle ourselves. When we die, we tend to put ourselves in hermetically sealed vaults, or we burn ourselves up to a crisp using energy to turn ourselves into ash. Instead of something like now, you can do green burials. You actually have the opportunity to speed up your own decomposition if you use mycelial shrouds. But humans don't think about that. Humans don't consider their impact with the carbon cycle when they die. They just take. Humans take. So we have to begin to understand that we're using more than our fair share to feed ourselves, to do certain forms of energy for ourselves, and we have to change that. It's going to do nothing but get worse as there's more humans using more annual primary productivity. The other annual primary, there's historic primary productivity, which is what fossil fuels are. So it's all of the energy that chlorophyll turned into fossil fuels that we've been mining and burning and using, and now all of that is in the atmosphere too. So we put all this carbon that should just be in life forms into the atmosphere where it's not doing anybody any good, and we just have to stop it. The other really important thing is embedded energy. And what embedded energy is, it's everything that's manufactured has this cycle where it starts out with raw materials, and then you have to extract those raw materials and turn them into something. And to do that, you have to build things that can extract the raw materials. You have to process the materials when you pull them out. You have to turn them into parts. Then you have to assemble them, and then you use the product, and then you have to dispose of the product at the end of its life cycle. All of that takes up massive amounts of energy, which is like, for example, on a small scale, on our farm, we have a straw bale house that we stuccoed with Portland cement concrete. When you make concrete, it takes a lot of energy to make concrete. You have to heat gypsum up to 1,000+ degrees centigrade and do all this stuff to make concrete. So we had great intention of using this material for stucco on a straw bale house, which is very efficient. We have some friends at another farm who also built a straw bale house, and they stuccoed their house with clay from their farm. So there's way less embedded energy in the stucco on their house. So they're starting out way ahead of where we are. And that just goes on and on and on in everything. That's one of the reasons why people who think that lab grown proteins are going to work, they're not going to work. It's too much energy. That's what all of that stuff, all of the kind of food-like products that too many of us eat instead of real food, all of the manufacturing, transportation, blah, 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 all takes up massive amounts of embedded energy, and humans are going to have to start thinking about that part of it all. So very specifically on our farm, what we do is carbon farming. And we raise pastured beef, pork, and chicken. And we raise soil engineers. We're not raising these animals for their protein, for their beef, although what we do creates the best form of beef that there is in so many ways that we can get to later. But we are targeting, with what we do, the creatures that are in the soil, not on the soil. So we use this process called biomimicry, which is basically like before North America was invaded by the colonizers and got rid of all the buffalo. There were 60 to over 100 million buffalo roaming the plains, roaming the savannas, coming into areas of savanna and prairie, and they would eat, they would trample, they would poop, they would pee, and they would leave, and that's how soils were built. And so what we do on our farm, and others like us, can use really simple technologies, basically some portable electric fence and portable electric fence, to mimic migration. And the reason you want to mimic migration is what destroys plants and soil health is overgrazing, and when you do that, you shrink the roots of the plants. And what you need to do is let the animals in. They graze. We move our animals at least twice a day, sometimes more.
And in the summer.
In the summer. In the winter, we do this thing called bale grazing, where we put their hay bales out in this pasture and let them into one bale at a time, and they disperse their manure and the hay that they don't eat, and it improves soil health like unbelievable, because you're putting a lot of soil carbon back in the soil. But using this biomimicry, we actually create a migration through our pastures. We have only 17 acres of pasture, but this past summer, we had the best pasture that we ever had, because we've been doing these practices for so long. And as it ended up, we were able to send our herd through their migration 3 full times, which actually increased our pasture from 17 acres to 51 acres. So when you use these practices, that's what happens. And yeah, and so we do the same thing with our chickens are in portable pens that we move through the fields. And it's kind of like you've probably seen this in African savannas, when the ruminant animals come through, and then the birds come through and they scratch through cow pies and eat flies and work it into the soil. That's what happens with how we employ chickens in our farm here. So the cows come through, they take all the tall grass down, and then we have chickens go through and clean it up, and yeah. So there's all kinds of great practices that are out there right now in what's called regenerative agriculture or agroecology. There's all kinds of nefarious greenwashing going on with especially ruminant animals, beef, where people in the beef industry want to say that no, there's no difference between the kind of animals you're raising and the kind of animals that we're raising. In fact, our animals are alive shorter than your animals, because we feed them grain, and that gives them that grows them to a butchering weight 6 months quicker. And so they are exuding methane for 6 months less than your animals. And so they're greener than your animals. And just the short answer to that, it's nonsense. So yeah, regenerative agriculture is a real thing, and it's what you want to do. If you have a problem with eating meat for climate, I'd encourage you to, yes, don't eat industrial meat. Stay away from it. It's nothing but bad in every way possible, not only climate-wise, but oh yeah, this one here. Are you familiar with the book Drawdown? It's kind of the climate change Bible. If you look this is the ranking of different things that are in the top 13. And as you can see here, one of the top ones there's 80 things on this list. Silvopasture is number 9 out of 80. Regenerative agriculture is 11. You get down a little bit below that. We have some of the best practices according to Drawdown is what we're using on our farm. So we consider ourselves climate farmers. We consider ourselves people who are creating some of the best proteins around and sequestering carbon at the same time. Let's take a break from there and see if any questions arise out of that. If you want to go ahead and strike the sharing here, and let's get a look at everybody and see who's got questions. Michael has a question. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah. So for those of us like me who don't want to be farmers, I'm just wondering, do you feel like compared to what's happening now with most farms, do you think like vegan meats and things like that are a better option? I mean, I know it's not ideal, but yeah.
No, and the reason I don't is because of embedded energy. It just takes too much energy to do that compared to what people are doing with regenerative practices. And there's too many ingredients. It's too much of pseudo food. What you want to do is both for health and climate is Michael Pollan's food rules. Basically, it's eat real food, not so much, mostly plants. That's all you need to know.
Dan.
Yes, thank you for talking with us tonight. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I'm wondering how much cooperative effort there is with other farmers in the area. I've heard of, I think it's called agroforestry, where some people plant trees on their property and then they run the cattle there so they get the shade due to the warming, and other people plant crops. Or is this something that is the message getting out? I guess I want to ask to other farms in the area, or do you experience resistance?
The message is getting out. Along the way, we become really involved with Farmers Union, with the universities. I'm involved with an organization called the Northwest Wisconsin Grazing Network. We just had our winter conference, and it's all about like helping people to understand how important these practices are. What else is there? Oh, we locally here, our chapter of Farmers Union has started a new organization called the St. Croix Valley Food Alliance, and it's all kinds of different farms who are local producers who are using these practices, who are raising food locally, and then trying to develop networks where we live to distribute that food, not only like farmers markets or different kinds of retail, but to get these kind of products into institutions, hospitals, schools, to wholesale, to grocery stores. And one of the reasons that that's so important is when the big dogs come in selling their stuff, they're extracting wealth from rural areas. And a lot of people think they're doing local farmers a favor when they say support your local farmer, as though we're like poor anachronisms who should get with what the real program is to make money off of a farm. But what's more accurate in buying food from a local farm is you're supporting the local rural economy. You're putting more people on the land who are living in communities, having kids in school, who are buying stuff from local hardware stores and feed stores and clothing stores when they send their kids to school. So the best way to revitalize rural economies is by supporting local agriculture.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Dennis.
Yes, a couple, two things. One is, if the cows and the animals are kind of defecating out there on the snow in winter, does that stuff all wash off when the snow melts? And the other thing is, isn't just getting your protein and everything from vegetables instead of going through animals, isn't that a lot more environmental?
Okay, to your first question, a big part of doing agroecology is to realize that we live in a watershed. And another group that I'm involved in, and actually on Thursday, is there's at Stout University, there's every year they have a watershed event there where people from all over the region who are concerned about your question go to learn about what it means to live in a watershed and how to protect a watershed. And so on our farm, for example, we have these things called swales, which are ditches and berms that are on contours throughout our pasture that actually we harvest snow melt and we harvest rain and spread it out and soak it into our ground. And so we don't have any runoff from like you're talking about, manure runoff, because we've done these practices that make our put more carbon in our soils. They make them absorb more water, and then because of these contours that we put in, we prevent that kind of runoff from happening in the first place. And then with the proteins, one of the most amazing things about ruminant animals is there's about 5,000 species of mammals on the planet. Only 200 of them are ruminants. And what ruminants can do, because of their multi-chambered stomachs, they can turn cellulose into themselves. They can digest cellulose. Humans can't go out into a pasture and eat anything meaningful. Yeah, you can have some greens, you can have like a salad bar, I suppose, but ruminant animals can eat cellulose and turn it into milk and meat and fiber and labor. And that's one of the reasons why you go back as far as you want to go back, that humans hooked up with ruminant animals. They are the magicians of mammals and animals. There's nothing like them on the planet.
I was gonna address Michael asking about meat as far as eating it. I think we are duped by the media to think we need such big pieces of meat. I mean, we raise meat, we raise chicken, we raise pork, and we eat so few chickens a year. It's really funny because we will roast it and then we'll make it into soup, or we use it for all the cooking we do and bringing it to here and there. But I think, who is it? Jefferson? Who said that you should eat meat as a condiment? That's kind of our rule of thumb on the farm, is that we do a lot of stir fry. We do a lot of adding that in because we have like a 2-acre garden. So, meat just goes on with everything else that we raise here. And so in the summer, sometimes we hit 95% of everything on our table is from, just a couple 100 feet away. So we, I think sometimes Mike is a substitute teacher, and when he teaches in the family and consumer ed class, he asks the kids, so how much is a portion of meat for your daily requirement of protein? And he brings in a steak or something from us, and the kids he'll get the knife out there and say, slice off what you think you need it in a day. And they slice off this big piece of steak. And then he brings it down and brings it down and brings it down. And it's, like a cigarette lighter, Real-
No, package.
package,
Or a
pack-
deck of
a
cards.
deck of cards. There you go.
Is all that you need of meat protein in a day.
So it's a matter of re-educating all of us on our food. I mean, that's what I'm more passionate about. Mike can tell you all the biology about that, and I can listen to that. But in reality, I'm the social worker, so just to be right up front about that. But I did have a lot of nutrition classes, but trying to introduce people to eating real food that has just been harvested, that tastes like what it is. We don't cook fancy for all the catering and weddings and stuff we do. It's just such plain food, but because it's so fresh, people think it's amazing. We have, we're like a one kale wonder. We have hundreds of people eating raw kale because of the way we cut it and serve it. People are like, well, that was the best slaw I've ever had. What was that? And I go, kale. And people have not eaten it before. I think this is probably a kale group, but I can't remember. Julie, did we have kale slaw when you were here?
Maybe so, but it was fabulous food. I just remember that. You put out.
So,
a beautiful
yes.
meal.
So to get people re-educated, I mean, it's almost as much of a conversion of heart to look at what's seasonal.
Yeah.
What is, we can go to the grocery store and get a strawberry any time anytime we want. But if you start eating seasonally, strawberries really do taste better in June. And
Right.
asparagus, we don't preserve asparagus. And somebody said, oh, you eat asparagus 3 times a day for 8 weeks? Don't you get tired of it? And we are like, no, we never get tired of it. And then we can't wait till that season comes back. So we really try in our education and that is as much of a message as everything else, is eating locally, eating seasonally, and eating real food. You get so much more nutrition out of it, and it just makes sense.
And it does cost less. We never sought self-reliance, in the food that we raise here. But like Barb said, probably 90 to 95% of what we eat comes from here. And so instead of going to the store, we walk in the wintertime, we walk down in the basement to the root cellar and bring up carrots, potatoes, cabbages down there, parsnips, whatever. That's what's for dinner tonight. Well, what's down in the root cellar? That's what we eat. In the summertime and the spring, you just wait for the seasons to come and go, and that's what you eat. I think it's the World War II victory gardens were a great example of what we should do. Farms should be raising things that people can't grow in their yards, like legumes, dry beans, pasture for meat, grains that are like real grains. One of the things with grains that you have to be aware of is that anymore, especially when you're getting grains from northern climates, right before harvest, they spray Roundup on the grain to dry it. They use it as a desiccant to dry it so they can harvest it more efficiently. You don't want to be eating, you got to know where your grain is coming from. You got to know where your wheat and your oats are coming from to know that they haven't been sprayed with Roundup so they can be, that. You want to know where your food comes from.
Right.
So Mike had a heart attack. There's Mr. I eat from the farm, I tend my animals. That's Mike's gym membership, is walking out to the pastures every day and making sure everybody's water and hay and all that stuff. And then out of the blue, he has a heart attack a year ago. And as he was talking to the doctor, one of the things that we have learned recently is we've raised pigs. I didn't realize that pigs were originally raised for the fat, not for the pork. And so we render our own lard. And if you have pastured lard, it has the same principles actually as olive oil. And so we have started using lard much beyond pie crust, way beyond pie crust. And so Mike has this heart attack, and we had a big, lots of headache about, because in the rehab, they want you to have a low-fat diet. They want you to bring down your meat, bring down this, bring down that. And we feel like our diet is very solid. And so to argue with all the medical profession was tedious. So Mike looked up something, and it was the 100 top heart healthy foods.
According to the British Broadcasting System.
And so there was one animal product on that list, and it was pastured lard, and it was what?
Number 8 on the list.
Number 8 on the list.
It was the only animal product on this list from the BBC for heart healthy stuff. Pastured lard was number 8 on the list. Lots of fish, lots of beans, lots of vegetables. The only animal product was pastured lard.
So now we have meat, we have our oil, we use that and olive oil, but a lot of lard actually to stir fry and do other things. And we had been doing a lot of maple syrup. That's one of the things that went down in our storm. And so this is the first year in 4 years that we put out taps. And we only have 1/5 of the taps we used to put out, but that was our sweetness or sugar stuff. And so just figuring out what's local to make all those things. We buy coffee for Mike, we buy chocolate for me. So we haven't figured out how to make chocolate here yet, but it's one of my most needed food groups. So.
And just so you know, with my heart attack, when I was, it pissed me off. It actually did. And at one point when they're still figuring out what they're going to do, and it was minor, I've had some symptoms. I got in. It was not a big deal. I never felt like I was going to die. Okay. But I'm talking to the cardiologist, and he's telling me this and that, and he's saying, well, how you doing? And I was going, I'm not doing well. I do everything right. I'm almost 70 years old. I'm at my college weight. I'm active. I eat real food, blah, blah, blah. And he says, well, according to what we know about your family history, you should have been in here a long time ago. My dad had heart attacks. My brother has a crazy heart. He had a pacemaker put in when he was 19. He's got his ventricles are backwards. And the guy said, just keep doing what you're doing. You should have been in here a long, long time ago.
So we would encourage anybody who would venture to this side of the state to come see what we do and come stay with us, come eat our food, and come hang out, because it's amazing. You look at those pastures and you see a difference, and you look at very happy animals who have such a very happy life. And then we look at all the people. We actually have just gotten into a new program where the meat that we raise here is going to be going to local food shelves in the tribe. And it's a new program with the feds, and
it came out of COVID. It's called Local Food Purchase Assistance. And I applied to it, got in the program for 2024. And what that's going to let us do here is, instead of me, I do farm to table retail. And instead of, and when I do that, people who know that food should cost more than it does. Okay. Part of the industrial system is they hide all of the externalities of what they don't want to pay for by the way they do their practices. A lot of that's environmental. It's all the stuff that runs off of fields, that goes into the Mississippi River, that goes to the Gulf of Mexico, and creates a dead zone the size of what, Delaware, that nobody wants to pay for. And so so you can either buy cheap food from that system, or you can pay people doing agroecology to get the environmental benefits out of the practices that they do to protect the watersheds and to protect our soils and blah, blah, blah. So with this program, I used to have to sell my food to people who could afford it. And now I can get it into food pantries.
Wow.
And get the best protein you can possibly get from these systems to people who can't afford it. And that's another thing that this program was about. They wanted to see is if lower income people were eating real food, if it would benefit them cost-wise in the long run to get real food as preventative medicine, rather than eating food-like substances that they get from second harvest throwaway industrial crap. And if you've worked in food pantries, you know what I'm talking about. Way too much sugar, way too many ingredients, blah, blah, blah. So we are just delighted that we're able to live on this piece of land that we're on, which is in ceded territory for the Ojibwe in our area, and we can use this resource that we live on to create this food that goes directly into food pantries involving people at the reservation that are 3 miles away from here.
Wow.
Charlie has his hand up.
Yeah, wow, it's really an incredible model you have out there. It's absolutely amazing and wonderful. I wonder, do you have to be concerned about CAFOs encroaching on your area?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And do you have to worry about nitrates and PFAS? And how about the big wind farms that are coming into some of the areas in southern Wisconsin?
Well, we can tell you this, that yeah, several years ago, there's a big hog CAFO is threatening to move into Burnett County, which is directly adjacent to Polk County. We're fighting that like crazy and are holding them off. Been holding them off for 3 years now. What you're not going to be happy about is what happened in Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Assembly today is that at the urging of Wisconsin Manufacturing and whatever the hell they are, the big state lobbies and the big state dairy organizations, today the House and the Assembly passed bills to remove local control in townships and counties in Wisconsin so that they can't create ordinances that regulate how these operations are run. That passed today in the state assembly, and it's going to Evers, and we'll see if Evers has the wherewithal to not sign it, because this is all the big dairy guys. This is all of this is the big dogs who are trying to tramp all over local control. And isn't that funny, right? They people who live in rural areas don't want any control. They want to be able to do whatever they want to do on their property, and yet they don't want people who live here to put ordinance together. It doesn't say that CAFOs can't come here. It says that if you want to be a CAFO and you want to be in our county or township, this is how you have to run your operation to protect everybody. And
I don't understand what a CAFO is.
It's a centralized animal feeding operation. It's basically animal factories.
Okay.
So they have to have how many?
So a CAFO is considered 1,000 animal units, which is based on different size animals. So 1,000 cattle would be a CAFO. For pigs, it would be more like 2,800 pigs would be considered a CAFO. For chickens, it would be, 6,000 chickens or a certain amount of turkeys. It's based on the size of the animal, the weight of the animal.
But some of these CAFOs are 10,000
Yes.
cows.
They're giant.
10,000 pigs. They're
Yeah.
huge.
The one that they wanted to bring into Burnett County would have been the biggest CAFO in Wisconsin, and it's actually bigger than any of the hog CAFOs that are down in Iowa. And
Wow.
originally Smithfield was behind it, which used to be a South Carolina company that was the biggest pig operator in the country, and they were bought out a number of years ago by China. And so now China owns Smithfield. And when you go into a grocery store and you see those little Smithfield labeled packages there, that is regulated by the Chinese Communist Party. Just so you know.
So your water quality is still okay out there? You don't have to worry about PFASs or nitrates or phosphates?
Well, we all have to worry about PFASs, right? And you know what? You may have heard of PFAS, the polyfluoroalkyl. It's the stuff that 3M especially has put on everybody. It's it's the Teflon stuff. It's the anti-stick stuff. It's firefighting stuff. It's firefighting foam. Another moniker for PFAS is forever chemicals. They're getting in everything that you eat, and they damage health, and it's a huge problem. You need to know where you're getting your food from. Remember, you guys are from Milwaukee. Milorganite. Remember Milorganite?
Yeah.
Okay, sewage sludge from the city of Milwaukee that they thought, this is a great idea. We'll just take this stuff and process it and put it in bags and sell it to homeowners for compost for their home use. But they don't think that people don't know enough about how sewer systems work, and so they dump they just dump everything down the utility sink in the basement, right? Or they dump their motor oil down drains along the street. And so you have all of these chemicals going in with the sewage sludge, and all of a sudden you don't have a product that you can use for fertilizer. You have a product that you have to put in a Superfund disposal site. Yeah, Milorganite. Thanks for that, Milwaukee. I don't think they make it anymore down there. I hope they don't.
I think they do.
You
Oh,
think they
yeah.
do?
Yes.
Oh, well, you should look into Milorganite, especially now that forever chemicals are around.
They definitely still make Milorganite, and Melinda Myers is always pushing it. So
Wow.
it
Wow.
depresses me. No
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding. Tom has a question.
Tom has his hand up. And
Yeah, two questions. So do you have excuse me, do you have the bill number that we were talking about? So we can call up the governor.
I do. It's hold on.
We just got this call as we were coming home today from Minneapolis. So
It's Assembly Bill 957, and it's referred to as the Protect Our Farms Act.
Okay, 957.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
As long as I got a quick second here too. My understanding, because I've talked to some of the people who work at the Milwaukee sewage system, is that most of the Milorganite goes to golf courses.
our teacher.
And so I think that probably is some that goes elsewhere, but it's a prime material for putting greens in golf courses.
Oh, wow.
But it's probably not, it's probably used in other places that is not appropriate. So
And seriously, the PFAS forever chemicals are a big problem with that, because one of the things that they're finding even on organic farms, there's farms out there that have used like municipal sewer sludge as a fertilizer on their farms for decades, and they're finding out that the PFAS are going up into their plants, into their animals, and they're closing down these farms, and they're destroying the animals that are raised on farms that used products like mill organite on their farms.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely don't put it on your vegetable garden. I don't know if the putting green is it's gonna go somewhere. Maybe that's the place to put it, is on the putting greens. I don't know. Jean had a question. Are you willing to ask that, Jean?
Hi, yeah, I was wondering if you were familiar with the Weston A. Price organization, because they are very supportive of organic farming practices and exactly what you're talking about with the grazing and the animals.
Yes, we are, and yeah, they've been on this one, like that's what they do.
Mhm.
Weston Price Foundation. There's another one that I can refer you to, a website that has lots of good information. It's called eatwild.com. Eat Wild, and it's all about grazing, pasture raised, everything. They have health benefits. They have just, it's a slew of information. And you can when you go there, they have maps where you can look to see where you live and who's selling these kind of products where you live. So write that one down. Eat Wild.
How about your YouTube, Mike?
Oh, and if you want to see our farm, I have a YouTube page. That is, it's Anathoth Community Farm. You go to YouTube and search Anathoth Community Farm. I've got over 850,000 views, so believe it or not, I am considered a YouTube influencer. And I noticed like a couple of years ago that ads were appearing on my videos, so I monetized it, and so now I'm actually, one of my income streams is not only selling this kind of food, but I have an income stream from YouTube.
Yay for you. Good.
You can find out that chickens don't like snow on their feet, and then you can see the pastures. I mean, it's pretty folky. It's pretty unedited. So Mike goes out with his little camera or his
Hey.
little phone and just makes it, and then just puts it on. So
I've got over 850,000 views.
there you go.
Mhm.
Dennis.
Yes, I grew up in Kewaunee County, and small dairy farm. We had 25 cows, and the sons of one of our neighbors now has 10,000. But I'm really curious if you could say a little bit about why your types of pigs have healthy oil. We had a couple of pigs on the farm, and why is it different from the other type of ways pigs are fed?
It has to do with when pigs are pastured, they have to have grain. Okay, so it's about the kind of grain that you feed the pigs, or they have to have, they don't have rumens, so they have to have protein. So it can either be grain, or it can be like nuts or acorns. We would when we could, we would let our pigs into the woods that are around the pasture where they are at the right time of year, and they would be grazing on acorns. In the swales that I told you that we have throughout our pasture that capture water and do all that kind of stuff, there's woody perennials. One of the big woody perennials is hazelnuts. And hazelnuts are far too complicated to process manually for human consumption. So we take our hazelnuts.
In our opinion.
Yes, in our opinion, it's pretty nutty. If you know, yeah, nutty. If you know somebody that has processing capabilities, take your hazelnuts to them, and you'll turn a 5 gallon or a big amount like that into about these many usable nuts, but maybe this many.
we were pretty excited the first time we actually got hazelnuts and thought to get them before the squirrels and the deer and all the other. It is the most sought after nut in our civil pasture. So you'd see them and you'd think, okay, I'll bring a bucket tomorrow. And then if you forgot a day, all of a sudden they were completely gone. So one year we were actually ahead of it. We got 5 gallons of hazelnuts. We were all excited, did all the research. I dried them. Then I took the husks off and I dried them again. And then you realized after that you had to crush them with the nut crusher. And I think out of the 5 gallon, I did get less than a pint jar of edible nuts. Not even enough for Nutella or anything. So this is why it is our opinion. We look at a little bit of time management, like, okay.
So back to the question about that. So pastured pigs, and there's all kinds of different varieties of pigs, and there's ones that really do well on grazing, and there's others that don't. The pink industrial pigs that you see, you like in pictures of CAFOs, they're bred for that. But when you have like an old school heritage pig, and you have them eating particularly fresh grass and clovers and forbs, it's a salad bar to them, which they eat a lot of, and it literally changes the chemistry of the fat in the pig from omega-6s to omega-3s. And that's the same thing that happens in pastured chicken and especially pastured beef. And omega-3s, as you know, are more like what you're going to get in fish. Yeah, when they're eating what they were intended to eat, they're healthier, they're happier, and the meat that they produce is better for you.
Our pigs are right next to our garden. So if we're harvesting anything, all the extra leaves and the roots and stuff just get thrown over the pig fence, and then they eat all that. Our corn, our sweet corn that we grow is right along the fence. So they kind of watch it all year. They won't cross the fence, but they watch it. And then that day, sometimes we'll even re-fence and turn them in after we've harvested, and they'll take everything down. You'll not ever know there were corn there, but you really have to lure them across that where the fence line was, because they're smart about electric fence. And then once they get to the corn, they just sleep in it. It's like a corn dream, so.
Oh, thank you.
Julie.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize for being late to this meeting. I had quite an adventure the last 24 hours getting home from Tucson, Arizona. It took 2 days, and got in at about 5:30 this afternoon, in time to come home to a fundraiser that I was supposedly giving for Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate for president, who's really into you guys and what you're doing. And so in the midst of all that, I ended up with about 50 people here in the house, and got a little late onto this video, onto this meeting. But one of the things that really has always impressed me over the years, to both of you, who I consider, old-time friends and people I've respected and appreciated for a long time, is the work that you've done with young people coming mainly out of the Twin Cities, because that's the closest big urban area that you're near. And if you could talk a little bit about how you bring young people into your area, onto your farm, and how you combine the philosophies of nonviolence with the philosophies of ecology and environmental care, please.
We used to have a very nice relationship with St. Thomas. It's not that we don't have that, it's just that the people that were bringing students out twice a year either retired or died. So we don't have quite that same population, but out of that population that came out consistently, they would come for an afternoon, tour the farm, we'd feed them supper, and then we'd have a big discussion on activism. And so many people, some of them became interns and lifelong friends. And, you know, young people don't know how to do stuff, and you learn how to do stuff here. You know, you learn how to can, and you learn how to do maple syrup, and you know how to, you know, snap a bean and all the stuff that doesn't seem extraordinary to us, but so many have written back saying, oh, I'm doing this, and it's because I learned it there. And so we have now a church in Minneapolis bought the adjoining land, kind of to keep it out of the CAFO hands.
It's a long story, but
Yeah.
the coolest thing ever.
And so they're talking about sending 2 to 3 interns for 4 days for over 6 weeks. And what we're hoping that this urban church will do is keep bringing people out here to learn how to fall in love with the land and that natural order of things is kind of our underlying hope. But we've done alternative spring break over the years. We have hosted the second, now 3rd grade field trip at Lux School.
Oh, yeah.
And for maybe 29 years, it started when our son was a 2nd grader. And we talk about solar energy and care of the soil. It used to be a maple syrup field trip, and then we realized that it's always so muddy. We could never get a right day. So now they come in the spring and see baby animals and run around the farm. They tip our solar panels from the winter position to our summer position. So we get to talk about all those hands-on things. They bring a bag lunch because post-COVID, that's what they do. We don't feed them lunch anymore. But then we talk about their garbage. And we say, okay, what do you got left in that box of yours? And, you know, who would eat this? Would the chickens like your apple core? How about, what else you got in there? Well, who will eat my potato chip? Well, the pigs will probably eat your potato chip. And then, you know, and we get all the way down, and hopefully our smallest thing is trash. But this can be recycled. The compost worms might really love this. And we go through 8 stations. And then the very last one is like, I guess that goes in the trash. But we try to comprehensively teach young to old on some new things and new thoughts, and hope that along the line, well, we still run into kids that go, I was at your farm in 2nd grade. And now we have not a clue who they are, but they know us.
Well, and on that day, one of the things we try to introduce them to is we have a urine diverting composting toilet. So the pee goes into a barrel and we use that for fertilizer. That's actually the #1 video on my YouTube page, is the one on using human urine as fertilizer. It's actually, if you Google that and go to videos, I'm #2 on Google for that video. But we we make sure that there's a pile of composted human manure ready to introduce to the 3rd graders. And we'll go out there and I'll put my hands down in it, scoop it up and go, so what do you think this is? And they'll scratch their heads. And then I tell them, well, it used to be poop and toilet paper.
And then they go, ew.
And they go, ew, ew. And then I go, and then we did this and this and this. And now it is soil that you can grow plants in. And they all want to touch it. So.
We don't tell their parents that.
Well, and then they write thank you notes. And they'll be like, I did not know that. Blah, blah, blah.
Hey, Dennis, you want to pick up the last question here?
Not so much a question, but in December, this last December, I spent 2 weeks in China, travel around a lot. Didn't see any green lawns, but around every house and apartment buildings and stuff, there are all these gardens. So just thinking in terms of urban people connected to the land in an urban way, And I just, how different is that from, and I didn't see any golf courses in China.
Wow. It's amazing. Our daughter is farming her boulevard in Minneapolis, and somebody said, you know, that's city property. And she goes, yeah, I know, anybody. And they said, so really anybody could pick your broccoli. And she goes, yep, pretty much. But she keeps farming it. She's got 6 boxes and it just overflows.
Along that point again, I got distracted in a long time ago, but the Victory Gardens in World War II, if you look that up, there was 1 year of, they kept track of all of that. And I can't tell you which year it was, but 1 year during that period of time, there was more produce raised in Victory Gardens than there was by the produce sector of the farming produce sector. The entire farming produce sector, more vegetables were raised in Victory Gardens than by the whole commercial sector.
Wow.
Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight and sharing all the wealth of information that you have.
Yeah,
Well, thank
thanks
you
so
for
much.
having us.
Interesting.
Want
So
to
I guess we should finish up on a hopeful note, or just, you know, we are so glad that you meet and that you are so concerned about, I mean, all of us, I look at all our ages and go, yeah, you know,
So where are you located exactly?
we are in Luck, Wisconsin. So we're about an hour and a half out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. So we really are on the other, we're about a half an hour from the border of like Taylor's Falls, Highway 8.
Okay.
From Milwaukee, you would come to Eau Claire, cut up to Rice Lake, and then come west. And we're just off that Highway 48, not too far in Polk
Please
County.
spell the name of your YouTube channel.
It's Anathoth, Anathoth Community Farm.
Thank you.
But it is going to take all of us everything we can do to turn things around.
Indeed.
And if the whole world was living as you are, it would be a totally different place. And I think the whole concept of regenerative agriculture and agroecology is a huge part of the answer to climate change from everything that I've researched and read. And I'm so glad that you're one of the leading voices in this and one of the leading examples. So thank you so much, both of you, my dear friends.
One more thing, there's a new movie out. You may have on Netflix seen Kiss the Ground.
Yeah.
The people
Yes,
who have
very
done
good.
Kiss the Ground now have Common Ground. I
Mm.
think it's shown in Milwaukee. It's new enough that they're needing to like book paying gigs for it because they have to pay off the expense of making it. But I've seen it's great. Common Ground. They have a website. Look it up. Again, they have resources, all that stuff. And if you can, try to get it shown in your neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.